Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon. Today is now the 12th of June, 2017, and I just finished watching World's End, which is the first episode of the Dalek invasion of Earth, which is off to an okay start. Definitely, it's an episode of two halves. The first half is a really good exploration piece of this deserted London. Now, of course, you're not supposed to know the Daleks are coming because each episode has its own individual title, and it isn't announced beforehand what the overall story is going to be called. So this one, you just are supposed to know is World's End. But the episode just sort of drags on. I mean, you get little hints, but I mean, you have the TARDIS crew split up, and which is okay, fine. They get split up. Good way to start the episode and get us into a pretty good position for things to move along at a decent-ish pace and to have, the characters in their respective areas, doing their respective duties as characters. But it just drags. The episode just really drags. Like, Barbara and Susan, they meet up with these people who are the Resistance, and it's all done without knowing that it's really the Daleks in London, which isn't mentioned once until the very end when there's a cliffhanger, which I'll get to the cliffhanger later because I don't really like the cliffhanger. The cliffhanger is just kind of dumb overall. But yeah, you have these new characters like, oh, really, it feels like the Daleks should be showing up halfway through, and then we can maybe have a chase to get away from them, and I don't know, something else being a cliffhanger. Really, all you get is the people in the weird robot helmets who are aptly named Robo-Men, which is kind of dumb. And really, this episode is very ambitious with trying to do a lot of, like, saucer effects in London. All the saucers really look kind of, they look really bad. Like, you can tell they're just, like, sort of, it's like pie plates put on a string, and like, right, ooh, creepy saucer, look, we're all aliens, ooh, spooky, spooky, spooky. I do have some good things to say. William Hartnell is really funny in this one, and Caroline Ford as Susan is probably having one of her better episodes in this one, because she's had a lot of issues lately of just not contributing too much to the story and just sort of being kind of dull. I mean, I really can't say I've enjoyed the character and the character's interactions with, anyone. It just sort of, it doesn't feel quite right to me the way they have everything set up to be. I mean, you have some pretty decent setup for a plot, but just not just a lot of setup, and a lot of it drags for quite a long time, and we don't really have much explanation as to what's going on in London. There's scenes with Ian and the Doctor in a warehouse just looking for tools, and we get to find out the date, and that's really all the scene is there for. I have to say the direction of this first episode isn't the best. Like you have like this bridge that collapses and falls onto the TARDIS, and you can't really tell what's going on. A lot of times you just can't tell what's going on. It's like, oh, we're trying to do so much, so we're trying to get out dialogue and rush around, and the cameras just aren't picking it up quite well enough to give you a good idea that things are going this way or that way or whatever way they're supposed to be going. And I mean, just over the course of the episode, it doesn't seem to be working too terribly well as an episode. I just can't get behind what's supposed to be, like, what really is supposed to be happening, and where the characters are supposed to be going from point A to point B, and then point B to point C. So I'm gonna have to give. So I mean, The World's End. It's an okay start to the story. So I'm gonna have to give it a 5 out of 10. Alright, so it's now the 13th of June, 2017, and I just finished watching The Daleks, which is the second episode of the Dalek invasion of Earth. And I have to say, this is much an improvement over the first episode, where the first episode was very much an average piece of exploring the abandoned Earth. This one has a very, very closeted atmospheric feel of everybody just trying to survive, while the Daleks are in full force and deciding we're going to try to take one stand and we're going to try to defeat this menace. And who knows? And which is really good because this is the first alien invasion, and it's not going to be easy going because this episode you have this group of rebels who are like, right, we're going to do it. We have this bomb. And it's interesting because this bomb that they have, they can't they use it in their assault and it fails. The whole point of this is that the humans have failed in trying to destroy the Daleks, and they're just working on trying to find possible solution after possible solution. And it really gives you a good sense of hopelessness. It makes the Daleks feel like a really credible threat, which is really what this episode needs to... I mean, you already have the Daleks gunning down people in their original story, but this one's just improving markedly on, where... basically how they act and how they're motivated and how things will go. It would go if the Daleks took over the planet and were put in charge of everything. And it's just sort of a terrifying episode. I have to say, William Hartnell, he's you can see all of his growth is here. He's like, well, you think you're the Masters of Earth. There's this other one where you think you're the Masters of Earth, but to do that, to be Masters of Earth, you'd have to have killed off every human being, which, it's this amazing concept, and makes the Doctor really have this confidence in humans, and, this is really what it seems is making him, seeing these foes that they think they've already killed all of them. He has to defeat them because they're on the planet Earth, which... I mean, this is the first time we're really on the Earth. One, it's the future, and two, there's an invasion going on, which is... It fascinates me to see how we have Terry Nation writing this story as the Daleks have come, and they're here to kill everybody, which is just... It's a really, really good way of making the threat feel very, very credible. And I have to say... watching the episode, you have a really good sense of everything going crazy. Couple of complaints. We get a lot of extra characters who they're all just like they're just sort of a ragtag group of rebels. David Campbell gets a little more development, but all the other rebels are just sort of there. You have this Jenny, who, according to a lot of the production information behind the scenes, would have been a contender for a companion. She just is really kind of an annoying character. We don't need all this crazy stuff. It's kind of fine the way that we have it. But yeah, you have the Daleks rising up from the sea, and everything's really interesting. You have the Robomen, which are a really interesting idea with the Daleks basically controlling them. And the big cliffhanger is that the Doctor is having an operation on him to become one of these evil creatures, which... It's a really, really, good way of making the threat feel credible, because you have the main character of your story becoming nearly evil. But that's all I have to say. You have these. I mean, I also have some problems with some of the direction of this one. Again, it still has this very much set the camera down and let's go. You have some really nice shots of the entrance of the saucer going at a sort of a high up angle looking down. Which it does. I think it does a ways to try to make a lot of the less than stellar set of the saucer look a lot better than what it actually is. So I there's some nice shots like that, but other than that, the direction is just a very, very plain direction. It's still Richard Martin doing it. Now, he did the original story, so I'm going to have to give the Daleks a 7 out of 10. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is now the 14th of June, 2017, and I just finished watching Day of Reckoning, aka the third episode of the Dalek Invasion of Earth. And really, this is improving on... This is an episode that not too much... this is very much setting up the rest of the story, having the Doctor and Susan go on their little bit, Ian go on his little subplot, and Barbara go on her little subplot into 3 strands that are all going to meet up, probably just going to meet up at the end. which is a really good way of tackling it. So we can sort of divide the time and basically keep the story moving and not have to probably have many pacing problems. And this episode doesn't really have much pacing problems. Um, it's an episode to look at the sheer spectacle of Daleks trundling along in the streets of London, and just seeing London deserted it's a very, very powerful image, as you have, just all the Daleks being like, just sort of, they're there, and they are just looking to kill anyone who they come across. So, I mean, we have casualties, like you have a second-rate attack on the saucer. Um, it all fails. The few survivors try to regroup, and Ian's stuck on the saucer, and they're all sort of heading towards Bedfordshire, which is where the Daleks' sort of main base is. Which, I mean, I don't know how they're gonna try to do it. Dortmund, who's a guy in a wheelchair who created the bombs that were gonna destroy the Daleks, he gives the notes to Barbara to give to the Doctor, and then he sacrifices himself. Susan and the Doctor are with David Campbell. Susan and David actually have a kind of nice relationship being set up over the course of this episode, as they're just sort of very flirty and they work very well together as a couple, which is an interesting way of setting them up. At least that's what happened, what I see through my eyes. Just sort of an interesting sort of relationship between the two of them, and I can't help but. And it's just like, ooh, we have all this amazing setup, and the big cliffhanger is that the Daleks are gonna, basically, they are going to blow up London, and it's gonna create a massive explosion and kill everybody. That's what they're trying to do. They're just like, right, we're gonna try to kill everyone who's there, because I don't think it's worth it, and it's no longer worth it, and it makes the Daleks be a really good threat. This episode does have a few minor flaws. First off, some of the direction is still very, very spotty. There's another shot of the Dalek saucer that looks just, it shouldn't have been done. Attempted. I mean, yeah, Richard Martin tries his best to attempt it, but other than that, a lot of the episode in and of itself looks pretty good. And I mean, you have a lot of, oddly enough, Terror Nation has a lot of supporting characters in this one that are really actually quite interesting people. I mean, they feel like real people. They contribute to the plot. It's all a really good way of setting up these characters and giving us giving the audience something really to latch onto, so we can have we can have the story be progressing at a very, very nice pace. And I have to say, Jacqueline Hill really is really shining in this story, like she usually does. She's a character. Barbara's very much a character who takes control of the situation. It's like, right, I'm not gonna give in, and it's actually a really, really good character. A very, very much depth, that she's very much headstrong, and I'm gonna be a go-getter and try to basically just try to save the planet, even though she doesn't really know stuff. And the Doctor, he has this great moment where he's like, "Oh no, Susan, I want to go back to the TARDIS. I want to get us away from here." And then she suggests, "Oh, you can't do that. Like, I mean, you sort of almost guilt tripping him," and he realizes, "No, you're right. I can't." It's this lovely, just little touches like that from William Hartnell that make him really good. So, all in all, I'm gonna have to give Day of Reckoning a 9 out of 10 just because of that really bad direction. But it's a really solid middle episode. Alright, it is now the 15th of June 2017, and I just finished watching The End of Tomorrow, the fourth episode of the Dalek Invasion of Earth, and I have to say, this is probably weaker than the third installment, for a couple of reasons. First off, once again, the direction is very, very hit and miss. You have a lot of bits where the camera's just sort of sat there, and you have a lot more action with the saucers in this one, which they just don't even look good by 60s standards. I mean, they should have tried just not to include the saucers as much. I mean, they could have easily been cut out. Better to just imply that they're there, because there's a really decent explosion of a truck in this one that you don't need to see the saucer for, but you still believe that it happens. So you kind of get that feeling that that's why a lot of this stuff is just, it's not really fitting together very well. I mean, the plot is pretty decent. It's moving forward at a pretty good pace. I mean, it helps that this one is one episode less than the first Dalek story, so it's able to push forward just a bit more. For instance, it's in this episode, you have the Doctor passes out and he's out for the count because I think William Hartnell hurt himself in the making of the last episode, so they gave him a week off. Here, he's not necessarily on vacation. He's just got, interestingly enough, just a week off from filming, which I think is, an interesting way of doing it, having the Doctor take the week off. Susan and David are exploring the sewers to try to get out of London. Barbara and Jenny are in a truck running down Daleks to get out of London, and Ian's already in Bedfordshire. Really, all of it. This is basically just we're getting out of London. The titles in this episode is the end of tomorrow. There really isn't any sort of explanation as to what that means. Like, sure, London was assumed to be, put into flames, but nothing really happened because the Doctor because Susan and David were able to disarm the bomb. So you didn't really have that as a problem. I mean, not much is accomplished on Susan's front because they say, "Oh, we found a way out. Now we have to go back to get the Doctor who's passed out." Which it's okay. It's just kind of a bit of a waste of time. I mean, there's a bit with a baby crocodile, which is just a bit on the cute side, but other than that, there just isn't anything that interesting to be said about it. That happens. I mean, also, I have to say the cliffhanger is probably where the episode falls the most flat. You have this creature called the Slither, which is just it's just like a blob of rubber with a claw. That's really all that it looks like. It just doesn't look very good. So I'm gonna have to give The End of Tomorrow 7 out of 10. All right, it is the 16th of June, 2017, and I just finished watching The Waking Ally, which, first off, the title doesn't make any sense. It's just sort of, it's there. It's just a random title. It's almost like a placeholder title because just so we can, just so the story can move on. I mean, it doesn't seem to mean anything. You just have this random title, and it doesn't do anything for the story. It exists. It's a title that exists. The story really has the episode really is just, it's sort of a meandering episode that just sort of gets everybody in place. Really, the scenes with the Doctor, Susan, and David are the only ones that are really worth watching because Susan and David have a really good chemistry, and obviously Terry Nation is, implying that they're falling in love, that's how you do a love story. It's a really okay love story. I mean, it could be a bit more developed, but beggars can't be choosers. At least it's something interesting, whereas the rest of the episode is just sort of meandering. Like, Barbara's in the mine, Ian's in the mine. There's a good fight, there's a pretty good action scene, but other than that, there isn't too much interesting about this episode. It's just sort of meh as we get, meander towards a conclusion, because it's in episode 5, what do you want me to say? That's really all I can say about it. It's just sort of a blandish episode to give us towards the conclusion. I mean, Hartnell's back. The title doesn't make any sense. The Slithers, it gets killed off, and it doesn't act like an ally. Nobody in particular acts in any special way as an ally in this episode, which which is weird because that's what the title is. The title would have you believe that something happens. So yeah, that's really all I can say. It's kind of dull. I mean, the cliffhanger is really the only good part about it, because you have Ian being put into a bomb, ready to... Also, the Dalek's plan is revealed in this. Yeah, that's really what happens. And it's just a dumb plan. Like, we're going to hollow out the Earth's core so we can fly the planet. That's just kind of silly. Like, that just... It doesn't... it doesn't make much sense as to where the episode wants to go with it, so I'm gonna have to give The Waking Ally a 5 out of 10 just for being so weird. Right, it's now the 17th of June 2017, and I just finished watching Flashpoint, the 6th and final episode of the Dalek invasion of Earth. And this one brings out the big guns as the Daleks are all destroyed via getting rid of the power and then blowing them up in a volcanic eruption because they've dug to the center there. So the lava, so the bomb, it goes, so Ian sabotages the bomb. The bomb that they're using to get rid of the core, it blows up and creates a volcanic eruption. And the Doctor says goodbye to Susan in a very tearful scene that William Hartnell steals the show. Really, it's the end of the episode is the highlight. But there are a couple of really good little bits on the way. First off, when Barbara's trying to trick the Daleks into like saying, "Oh, I totally know what the rebels are planning. They're planning this and that and the next thing." When it's just all like old facts from history, which is that's just a really good little bit that I can't help but enjoy. And of course, you have that plus compounded with just really that's really all I have to. That's really compounded with a lot of Ian doing a lot of acrobatics, trying to get out, trying to sabotage the bomb, which is a pretty tense sequence. But I have to say, the direction is really what lets this episode down. It's not a bad episode, but there's a lot of direction here that just it doesn't keep itself to one format or style. So you have these issues with everything trying to happen. It just all at once. That doesn't really, and nothing really meshing well together to basically become basically the whole of being the sum of its parts. You have this great bit in the beginning, this great bit in the middle, and the great bit at the end, but the connecting tissue is really what doesn't sort of hold up very well in this episode. It's most definitely better than yesterday's episode. You definitely have something it's good. It's definitely good, but it just isn't anything special. Really, what elevates it is that ending scene with the Doctor and Susan, because I mean it's a very, very good scene, and it makes you feel like everything's changed now. A companion is leaving. This is Caroline Ford's the last time the marathon will see Caroline Ford in the role as current companion, though she comes back later on for some guest appearances. But other than that, there really isn't anything. I think the character is she's gone. She's completed her purpose, and now it's time for her to say goodbye. Which, is kind of interesting, I have to say, at least. So you have that just sort of existing as a way, just sort of in the way that it does. And it's a really good way of doing it. But really, it's just that direction, and a lot of the music also lets the episode down. But that being said, I think I'm going to give Flashpoint a 6 out of 10. Adding all the scores together for the 6th episode gives the serial The Dalek Invasion of Earth a total of 6.5 out of 10. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time in a couple days' time when we do the next televised story, which is The Rescue.